Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. And thank you for finding us. If you want to give us a sub and a thumbs up and a comment and all that fun stuff, it would be much appreciated. But only if you like Hong Kong cinema, only if you like the content, only if you like this video, only if you like the films and all that other stuff. So also shout out to my patrons really quickly. They enable so much on this channel, so many of the releases that you see me reviewing. I buy with money from Patreon, and I really enjoy the community in there. I do exclusive videos, wicked early release videos. You can sign up for $2 a month, $5 a month. Let's jump right into this video. It is a Blu-ray review / movie review. I had never seen this movie before, so I'm going to kind of talk about both. And this is a doozy because there's a lot to talk about. So what is the movie? It's Calamity of Snakes. I'm in my office, by the way, but I'm filming in it's not my office, I'm at work. This is another office that we have, and I thought it was visually more dynamic, so I'm filming in here. There's Jamaica Kincaid behind me. Calamity of Snakes. This was released by Unearthed Films, April 25th of 2023, so hopefully this review will be out the week that this is released. Unearthed put out the one with Anthony Wong, making people into meat buns. I can't believe the name of that film is escaping me right now. It is so famous. Untold Story. I could see the cover in my head. So they put out that film a couple years ago, and that was a very popular release. Fans of Hong Kong cinema. It's a very extreme, notorious Category 3 film, and it was directed by Herman Yao. And now we have Calamity of Snakes. So this is a Taiwanese film. It is worth pointing out, although there are like stunt performers and actors in this film who are from Hong Kong who went over to Taiwan to make the movie. And there's a bonus feature on here that I think will really appeal to fans of Hong Kong cinema. This movie came out in 1982. It was directed by William Chung. It is a Taiwanese exploitation film. And the first thing we need to talk about, and let me just show you the physical release here because there's not a ton to look at. It's just kind of the slipcase, and then you pull it out and you see the artwork here. I really like this just batshit old school like poster style artwork, and then you have the disc with the same artwork on it. So this is a very notorious film that I was honestly kind of afraid to watch because they actually killed tens of thousands of snakes, or thousands or hundreds of, I think thousands of snakes while they were making this film, and you see it in the film. And one of the commentators on the Blu-ray here describes this as a snake snuff film. Now, Unearthed Films on this release has included a cruelty-free version, so they cut out all of the footage of snakes dying or being hurt. And that's the version I watched. So if you watch this channel, you know that I have a big soft spot for animals, and I really, really don't want to watch movies with like any kind of, obviously I've seen movies in which animals, like Apocalypse Now is my favorite movie, and there's a scene in that movie where they kill a cow, and they were going to be doing that sacrifice anyway, and Coppola asked if he could film it, and there's a whole kind of story behind that. But I don't really want to watch a movie where thousands of snakes are like cut to pieces and burned and all this other horrible stuff, right? So they have included a version on here that has all of that stuff taken out of it, which I was very happy about because the rest of this movie sounds totally nuts. And I was like, I kind of want to see that, but I don't want to see all these snakes being killed. So not only have they included the cruelty-free version, which is 10 minutes shorter. So it's the cruelty-free version is 76 minutes, and then the standard version is 86 minutes. It does say 96 minutes on here, but I did start that version just to see how long it was so I could compare it. It came up, the timeline on my Blu-ray player said 86 minutes. So it's a 10-minute difference between the two versions. They're also donating a portion of sales of this release to snake charities. So someone like me who really likes animals and who doesn't want to see a bunch of animals getting killed and is kind of feeling icky about a release like this, when I see that they have gone to the length of including a version of the film that doesn't have all the snake stuff, all the snake killing in it, and they're actually donating money to snake charities, then that makes me feel okay about this because this movie already exists. Right? It's not like they made the movie and then they were like, oh, whoops, sorry, we'll donate this money. Like, the movie already exists. And by putting this out, they're actually doing something good by raising awareness for the cruelty in the film and by donating money to these snake charities. So I was actually very happy to get this release, and I'm happy to be able to talk about it here on the channel. So that is the snake stuff out of the way. So let me give you my thoughts on this movie. This is one of those movies that you really just have to see it to believe it. There were so many times in this movie where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm watching. And it's kind of hard to describe. Like, there's this giant snake. Let me tell you the plot of the movie. there's a developer who's building a new building, and as they're digging kind of the hole for the foundation, they find a bunch of snakes. And the architect is like the architect doesn't like the project anyway, because he's like, we're cutting a lot of corners, this might not be a safe building. Then they find all these snakes, and the developer's like, just kill him. And all the other people are like, what? And the developer himself, he's a very evil character. He gets in the digger, and he just like, he takes the giant metal shovel and shoves it down into this pit and cuts all these snakes to pieces. Now that, I didn't see that in the version. I saw the movement of the metal arm. You don't see the snakes being killed in the version that I watched, but I do believe you do see that in the uncut version, the theatrical version. So they kill all these snakes, and then they build this luxury building, and they sell all these condos, and all these rich people move in, and then the snakes come for revenge. And is kind of what you would think. But so there's like this king of the snakes, or a god of the snakes. There's like this absolutely massive snake that is like the head of the snakes. And there are multiple scenes in which that snake fights people. And in one of them, it's like kind of doing kung fu. Like, it is batshit insane. And like, they'll do this thing where a snake will like drop into a scene. So like, there's a scene where these people are playing mahjong, and a snake drops on the table, and they're like, ah, and then it cuts, and there's like 50 snakes on every person. Like, there's no build up, there's no like entrance of the snakes. It cuts from like, here's one, to like, everyone is now covered in snakes and being bitten to shit, and they're bleeding everywhere. And like, and this movie is not, if you take out the brutality towards the snakes, it's not an extreme film. I was worried that it would be, even with the cruelty-free cut, it would be like super gory. It's really not. It's not an extreme film when you take out the element of all the snakes being killed on screen, which I think is pretty bloody and disgusting. Obviously, I didn't watch that version, so it's really not that extreme of a film. And I thought it was just kind of like a fun, trashy exploitation film. But again, like, there are scenes in this movie where there's just like 1,000 snakes in a hallway, or like in this giant kind of atrium of this building, just slithering everywhere and crawling all over people. And like, it's friggin' insane. Like, I've never seen a movie like this in terms of like that level of snakes just everywhere in a movie. It was bananas. And it's almost like an Andy Sidaris type of movie, where it's just so, like, there's a sex scene where this guy gets one of the construction workers, before the building is open to the public, he takes like an escort into like the luxury condo to have a little nookie, and they're lying in the bed naked, and the snakes come in and start biting them while they're naked. Although I will say, this movie is very tame about sex, interestingly enough. I don't know if there were like censorship laws at the time in Taiwan or what, but there's no nudity that I saw in this movie. And the sex scenes are not, there are a couple sexy scenes. They're not really graphic. And that was interesting to me, because you have like extreme violence in the uncut version of these snakes being blown up and burned and cut to pieces, but you don't see any sex stuff. So it's pretty tame in that regard. But just like so many ridiculous WTF moments. There's one scene where like the giant snake grabs this guy who's peeing. He's like peeing into a ditch, and the snake grabs him and pulls him into the ditch, and it's almost like this giant tentacle like writhing up and grabbing him. And okay, so the other thing I didn't expect from this movie is it has a really goofy sense of humor in a lot of different ways. But there's this running joke. Oh, this is bad. Like, you could not do this now. This is very bad. But it also, it's like, I couldn't help myself from laughing. There's a very large woman in this movie, and there's a running joke about how big she is, right? Like, she goes into the condo, and she's like, this doorway is too small. And they show her sitting down on the toilet, and she's like, this toilet is too small. And there's a woman who's like a salesperson who's going around with her being like, okay, we'll make the doorway bigger. We'll make the toilet. You know, she's like writing everything down in her notebook. And there's a scene, there's kind of like the climactic scene, which is totally insane, right? Is this big party to kind of celebrate the opening of the building. So all like the rich people in the building are at this party, and they're dancing, and they're eating food and drinking and stuff like that. And there's like disco music playing. And then it cuts away to like the snakes coming into the building and killing people and finding people. And then it's just, so in a way, I mean, you could read this movie as like a metaphor for kind of like the hubris of wealthy people and their ignorance about the world, and not heeding the warnings of the world, and just taking what they want and doing what they want, and the way that that comes back to bite them and destroy them, right? It's almost like a snake revenge movie in this weird way, of like these rich people just like going around destroying the world, doing whatever they want to benefit themselves, and then nature bites them back. So in that scene, this very large woman is this is so bad. She's eating like cakes or something like that, and she's like shoving them in her mouth, and this waiter is watching her like, what the hell? And then, I shit you not, this is so bad. It cuts away to a pig eating out of a trough. It's so bad. But I couldn't, it's so ridiculous, and I couldn't help but laugh at it. And like, there are moments throughout this film of that really goofy, like deliberate sense of humor that adds levity to the film. So it makes it less kind of like terrifying. But I mean, the bottom line on this movie is it really is like one of those WTF, like Andy Sidaris style, um, you have to see it to believe it type of movies. Obviously, tonally and in like in terms of subject matter and stuff, it's very different than an Andy Sidaris film, but it has that stuff in it where like I can tell you about it, but it's not like I read about this movie before it came out. And it did not prepare me for what I saw. Like, you have to see it to believe it. It really is one of those types of movies. So to give you some information about the bonus material on here, there is a commentary track, and let me read you the names of the commentators: Nathan Hamilton and Brad Slatton. And that's very much just like a two friends watching the movie riffing podcast style commentary track that has some very funny moments. It is on the theatrical version of the movie that has all the snake killing in it. So I kind of watched it like with my hand over my eye because I didn't want to see what was happening on the screen during the snake killing moments. But one of the guys doing the commentary is afraid of snakes. So that adds an interesting element to it. Yeah. So, and then you have something called, let me read you the name of it here. This is the bonus feature that I think fans of Hong Kong cinema and just fans of kind of world cinema in general will really, really like. It's called From Shaw to Snakes: The Venom and Violence of Early Chinese Language Horror Cinema. This is 76 minutes long. And it begins with like a socio-political examination of modern Taiwan. Like, I shit you not, like you're watching a movie, you're watching a snakesploitation movie, which I guess is a thing. And it begins with these like academics talking about how modern Taiwan was founded, the history of China, Chiang Kai-shek, that whole thing, the Cultural Revolution, what was going on in mainland China. Then they talk about Hong Kong, the relationships between Hong Kong and Taiwan and mainland China and Taiwan, like the One China policy, the film industry in Hong Kong, the film industry in Taiwan. They talk about Shaw Brothers. Like, Godfrey Ho is interviewed in this. And there's all these academics and there's filmmakers, and it goes through, I mean, it's insane. Like, this is incredible. Like, this could have been made as its own standalone like feature and put out like on a streaming service or on YouTube or whatever. So as a bonus feature, it is freaking fantastic. And if you are interested in like the history of Chinese language horror films, but also kind of Taiwan in general and Taiwan's relationship to Hong Kong and this kind of interchange between the cinema scenes there, I would say this is like indispensable. And you should definitely check this release out just to see that stuff. It's so interesting and it's so fascinating. And then they talk about the films and all the violence and you know, all that kind of Shaw like horror stuff, and it's really, really fascinating. And then the other bonus material on here is it's called Reptilian Recollections: Lin Kuang Yung in conversation with Choi Yi Chung. So Lin Kuang Yung is a filmmaker, and she's relatively young. Maybe she's like in her 30s, and she's interviewing, kind of having a conversation with Choi Yi Chung, he's a Hong Kong actor and stunt performer who was in the film, and he was asked to come over to Taiwan. What he says is they called him. They're like, can you put together like some background actors and stunt performers who are not afraid of snakes, obviously, to come to Taiwan and be in this movie. And that interview is fascinating because he talks about, they had all these snake handlers on the set of the film. He's like 6 of them or something. And some of the snakes they had were poisonous. So they had to tape their mouths shut so they wouldn't bite people. And there were some accidents and people got bitten. He doesn't say whether they were bitten by the non-poisonous snakes or the poisonous snakes, but he said that they had snake venom antidote on the set so that if anyone was bitten by a poisonous snake, they could run over and just like inject them with it, which is insane, by the way. And I'm just looking at my notes here to see that something else that's worth noting is that, you know, I did some research on the internet. William Chung is the director listed on the internet, and his name on the back of the film here is William Chang Ki. So, just for people who are completists about all that stuff. Oh, and one other thing the guy said in the little interview section here is he said that it's actually easier to work with snakes than it was to work with dogs and cats because they just kind of like slither around and they're not like all over the place, and they're, you know, although I would imagine, I don't know, I never worked with snakes in a movie, like Would you be more worried about them biting you than like a dog? If it's a trained dog? I don't think you can really train snakes, can you? I don't know. Anyway, the movie is Calamity of Snakes, and I was really kind of worried about watching this movie, even the cruelty-free cut, because I was worried about the level of just gore and disgusting factor in it, because as you know, if you watch this channel, I'm not a fan of extreme horror movies, and it really was not an extreme horror movie, and I really enjoyed it. It had a silly sense of humor. The music is freaking incredible in this movie. I should have mentioned that earlier. I love the music, and the ambiance is great, and it's just a fun movie. And I should also note that the print that they have here, it's obviously not like a super high budget film. And there are certain scenes where, like, there's a parking garage scene where it really doesn't look like they bothered setting up any lights. So it's like very low lighting. And so because of that, there's a lot of kind of grain in like the shadows in the film and stuff like that. So there are things about this, I think probably if they were to try to fix them, they would have to use some kind of digital or AI process that would kind of change the texture of the film, and so they just kind of left it the way it was. But you can definitely tell they didn't have a big budget for this film. So it's Calamity of Snakes. It's Unearthed Films, Blu-ray review here. My name is Will. You're watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. This is a Taiwanese film worth mentioning again. Let me know in the comments what you think about this movie, what you think about this release, what you're excited about coming up for the rest of the year for releases, and we will see you next time.